officer at the college. And this is our second industry insider of the semester. So thank you for joining us, especially in the middle of your day, your work day. Today with us, we have Jamie Cooperstein, 03 from TCNJ, and she is going to be sharing the 5 keys to service excellence. And I'll do a quick intro before I turn it over to her. As I mentioned, she's an 03 grad with a degree in communication studies from the college. She went on to earn her master's from Temple University in tourism and hospitality management. She has over 10 years of experience in high-level hospitality management, including concierge at the award-winning Rittenhouse Hotel and Condominiums in Philadelphia. She went on to then become the director of concierge services at a boutique property management firm, and to now having opened her own consulting firm, Cooperstein Hospitality Consulting, LLC, where she teaches and speaks to job seekers, companies, students, all about enhancing their customer service and how to enhance customer service. Jamie was also named by BillyPen.com as Who's Next Under 40. She is a former president of the Philadelphia Area Concierge Association, and she serves as an adjunct professor at Drexel University. And we'll have to get you back here to TCNJ, Jamie. We're really happy to have you with us today. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this. And like I said, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you again.
Thanks, Pam, and happy Tuesday to everyone. I am ecstatic to be here. Please all feel free to eat lunch. It's completely fine for you to be munching away while I'm talking, so I will not take offense. Let me take a moment to share my screen and make sure you all can see my slides, and we'll get started. All right, so if everybody can just give me a heads up and make sure that they can see some slides on the screen.
There we go, yep.
Okay, perfect. So as Pam said, I graduated from TCNJ back in 2003. I'm a very proud TCNJ alum, but I have to be honest, when I was going to school at TCNJ, never in my wildest dreams did I think that my career was going to take me to teaching and educating and motivating others on customer service and providing the best possible customer experience. I was a journalism and communication studies major. I spent time interning at various, media outlets in the Philadelphia area. My first few jobs found me in television stations, working for in sports media, and my dream was to actually be a sports anchor on ESPN. And through a wild roller coaster story, which I'll have to tell you all another time, I needed to find a different career path. I realized that working in sports was not for me. I basically preferred being the fan to working in sports, and was very fortunate to land an interview at the Rittenhouse Hotel, where we had a family friend that was working there at the time. Went in to the interview thinking that I was going to be a front desk agent. And instead, they offered me the position of a concierge. And it changed my life, to be perfectly honest. And it set me off on this path, certainly for a new career, but also a new passion. And today, everything that I'm going to be sharing with you, these 5 keys to service excellence, everything is pulled from my 10 years spent in the trenches, wearing a uniform, sometimes being yelled at by customers, and it's true, authentic experience, and I'm excited to share it with you all today. So this is a picture of me during that 10-year span. I worked at the Rittenhouse Hotel, as I said, and I also worked at the residences at 2 Liberty Place. Some concierge desks you're standing. At the Rittenhouse, I stood. At 2 Liberty Place, I sat, which was a really nice reprieve to not be on my feet. And once again, excited to share with you some of my greatest takeaways. And my biggest takeaway, though, without a doubt, would be that you never get a second chance to make a great first impression. This is in personal life, this is when dating, and certainly this is in a professional setting. And I'm not sure what everybody does quite yet for a living, and we'll get to that throughout the session today. I'll be eager to hear where everybody works and what your role is, but certainly in a professional setting and when interacting, whether it's customer facing, whether it's over the phone, whether it's via email, in any capacity, you have to make a great first impression. You also need to make it memorable. And the only way to truly make that memorable first impression is to work really hard to exceed the expectations of your customers. If we rewound back to, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, I would say customers weren't as savvy then, and it might have been acceptable to just simply meet the needs of your customer. Not okay today. It's not enough. I think we all know what could happen from a detrimental standpoint if we fall short of our customer expectations. But I would encourage all of you today to really think about how can you work hard to really stay motivated and exceed the expectation of your customers. And I'm pretty sure that the 5 keys to service excellence are going to help you to do that. One thing I want you to think about today is that in order to really be a superstar when it comes to great service, I'm going to say something controversial now, but we need to think beyond your job description. So I'm going to ask each of you, whatever role you serve in, whatever company you work for, I know that some of you work for TCNJ, I'm going to ask you for the purposes of the next hour to truly push that job description to the side. And the reason I say that is most folks' job description does not actually state serving customers, providing the best possible first impression. Or if it does, it's probably like the 12th or 15th bullet down the list, right? Certainly at the top of the list are going to be other tasks. I'd love for everybody to take a moment now. Let's actually type in the chat box for me. Type in for me the main task that you find yourself doing on a daily basis in the job that you serve. It could be something that you do as the first thing when you arrive to work, or something that takes up the most amount of your time. But if you could write one thing in the chat box for me, please. Okay, great. I'm going to start to read out a couple of these. All right, Kristen says she's emailing. Angela says she's reaching out to alumni and trying to engage them with the college. Pam is planning programs for alumni. And I'll leave this up for a moment or two. Let's see what else. Kara says she's interviewing or reading. Laura also says she's sending out email meeting invitations. So you guys get, I'm not surprised by these answers. I don't think any of you are as well, that the kind of minutia, these tasks, these are extremely time consuming things, really important things, but this is really what takes up most of your day. And Amy says she is dealing with alumni engagement and event planning, and Gina is prepping for meetings with clients, emails, and other service related work. So once again, we're going to put all of those tasks to the side, and we're going to instead focus on our purpose, which is to enhance the customer experience. And even though this may not technically be listed in your job description, I hope it is. I certainly hope it is, but my guess is it's not. The goal is to remember that purpose in enhancing the customer experience. I want to share a story with you now, a true story about an employee that remembered their purpose and was successful enhancing the customer experience for my family. So my daughter, who is 4.5, is obsessed with princesses, and especially is obsessed with mermaids. So therefore she loves The Little Mermaid. And there was a local production in Philadelphia where I live of The Little Mermaid just prior to the pandemic. So this was a very risky move as a parent, because my daughter, who's 4.5 now, was about 2.5 before the start of the pandemic. And yes, I took her to a live production of The Little Mermaid. Granted, it was geared towards for young, kids and families, and it was a matinee. So we go to the show, we're in the auditorium, and my worst nightmare came true, which was my daughter Josie was scared to death. She thought it was too loud. She thought it was too crazy. I thought we should get a seat up close. She didn't want to be up close. And I found myself having to race out of the auditorium as fast as I possibly could. I tried to a few minutes later, pop back in, wasn't working, had to pop back out. And there was an usher that took notice of me in my parenting struggle and trying to figure out what to do. And mind you, my husband was still in the auditorium during this time, trying to figure out where we were and if we were okay. So this usher decided to approach me, and not in their job description, because obviously their job description is to send people to their seat or probably to the restroom if they need help finding it. Instead, they said, Please follow me. I have an idea. And I proceeded to follow this woman, and she took me over to the green room. And in the green room, there was a sofa and there was a television in the green room with a live feed of the performance. And she said, please feel free to take a seat with your daughter, make yourself comfortable. This space is completely yours for as long as you would like it. And we stayed for a really long time in that green room. And you know what? Josie really enjoyed seeing The Little Mermaid that day. And eventually we met back up with my husband and we walked home as a family. But it was a home run. And it was a home run because this usher, this probably a volunteer, maybe not even an employee, remembered their purpose rather than their job description and forged an emotional connection with us and put herself in our shoes, and we had a great experience. And this really is the hallmark of exceeding customer expectations. So this is just a rhetorical question right now, but how are you in your role? How are you going to consistently exceed customer expectations, just like that usher during my production of The Little Mermaid? So the 5 keys to service excellence, once again, these 5 keys were critical to my success back as a concierge in 2004 through 2014, and I'm excited to share them with you today. So what I'm going to do, everybody, just to set the stage, is I'm going to briefly give you an overview of the 5 keys, and then we're going to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into each of the 5 keys. After I do that deep dive with you, I'm going to prompt each of you guys to share if you have an example of how that key was something that you were able to do in your line of work. So as I'm going through this, I want you guys to start thinking and brainstorming, and please feel free to jot down a note or a story just so you remember it. So in a few minutes from now, when I ask you, hey, do you have any stories to share? You'll be ready to participate, okay? So in no particular order, the first of our keys today is going to be empowerment, or the art of first-person resolution. Our second key is providing personalized attention. Our third key is anticipating needs or being really proactive whenever possible. Timely service recovery. We often can't eliminate the customer from being upset. Maybe it was out of our control, but what is in our control, how we handle it and how we try to win them back as quick as we possibly can. And then lastly, probably my personal favorite, being a former concierge, is the art of under-promising and over-delivering. And that one's also really good in your personal life as well, with family and friends and loved ones. All right, so let's start out today looking a little further at personalized attention. This is really the difference between making your customers, and some of you, once again, you're working with alumni, so your customer's alumni, the difference between having a transactional experience with them or really forging an emotional connection. And probably the easiest example I can think of is just a transaction. Something that we can all relate to is when you've been at a supermarket and when you've been in line at the deli counter ordering a quarter pound of turkey, and you kind of pull a number ticket. I don't even know if that still exists today. I think it does, but if you pull a number ticket from the dispenser and the person behind the deli counter finally gets to your number, shouts out your number, you approach the deli counter and they serve your needs, but the whole thing is just simply transactional. They've never asked for your name. It wasn't memorable, right? So the goal is to avoid those transactions and make the customer fall in love with you, and more importantly, fall in love with your organization. So how do we do that? And that starts with simple best practices. These are all going to be a refresher for all of you, I have no doubt, but I'm going to elevate this even higher in just one moment, so bear with me. So starting to forge that emotional connection is going to start out with the importance and the power of a smile. And yes, in 2021, everyone, I know you all know this, you can still smile even through your mask, and the other person on the receiving end should be able to see that warmth that you're exuding even behind your mask. The power and the importance of a smile over the phone. For me, my sister, when I call her, it is so obvious what kind of mood she is in and whether or not she is smiling just based on her phone greeting. Some companies, they actually encourage their employees to put a mirror by their workstation just to remind them of the power of that smile and the meaning behind it. You feel it. You absolutely feel that intonation and that warmth and that energy when you're on the receiving end. Eye contact. 50% of communication is nonverbal. So the power of good eye contact, positive body language, that starts to, once again, make something feel like less of a transaction. Using time of day with your customers. So eliminating language such as hi and hello and swapping that out with good morning, good afternoon, good evening. These are all, once again, bringing us to forming a emotional connection. This is where it starts to get really, really critical, is using our customer's name. Lean in when a name is difficult to pronounce. Don't shy away from it. I think we all have a natural tendency to shy away from difficult names and just not use them. Ask the person, be bold. I'd like to make sure I get your name correctly today. Can you please help me pronounce it correctly? Okay. And I would also encourage all of you, try to use their name more than once in the interaction. So not just in the beginning, certainly at the closing, but I would throw their name somewhere in the middle of your correspondence as well. People love, love, love to hear their name being said. So let's use some examples. And for purposes of today's session, I wanted to use examples that I think are relatable. So I purposely am using hospitality examples from hotels and restaurants and retail, things that we'll all be able to relate to. So some best practices for personalized attention would be, let's say you're a regular customer at a restaurant or a bar. You walk in, and before you even order that drink, the bartender or the server, they remember your favorite drink or your preferred drink, and they're bringing it over to you. That forges an emotional connection. Another example would be if we've stayed at a hotel for a few nights, and the housekeeper, in an attempt to provide great service and not just get a gratuity from you when you're checking out for doing a good job cleaning the room, they leave you a personalized note that wishes you farewell and a safe journey home. They use your name in the message, and then they put their names in the salutation as well. Really nice gesture as you're about to depart from that particular hotel. Another example, this one certainly would work from a hotel as well. Let's say we're staying at a hotel for a week, and every single day we're asking for our car from valet, and we're going on a different adventure every single day from that hotel. But upon our return back to that hotel with our car on a daily basis, rather than saying, "Are you checking in?" instead they say, "Welcome back. How was your adventure today? How was ziplining? How was the tour? How was the lunch outing you went on with your family?" Once again, forging an emotional connection rather than that transaction where they didn't even remember us and they just said checking in again, which obviously we were not if we're staying there for a week. And then last example I want to use is I am a Center City, Philadelphia resident, and my mailman, Glenn, he serves probably thousands of people on a daily basis. And never does he fail to use my name when he is handing me a parcel or a package or a box, but he also asks about my young daughter. He remembers her name. He's amazing. And once again, he doesn't have to do any of that, but he knows the importance of how his interactions and his choice of words can make somebody feel, and I love him. I can't wait till he brings me a package. So I want to ask all of you now, how have you been able to make a personal connection with your customers? So if you're feeling bold, which I encourage you to be, I'd love for you to unmute yourself or raise your hand. And I'd love to hear how you've been successful at forging an emotional connection, or perhaps when you've been on the receiving end of great customer service. Maybe recently there's a story that you want to share where you were wowed by the personal attention that you received. And if you're feeling on the shy side, please feel free to also use the chat box if you'd like to share a quick story. So I'd love to see if there's one or two volunteers that would be willing to share a story of great personal connection.
I can do one.
Thanks, Gina.
This is one that just an experience that I had. And it's a little bit biased because I knew the person, but we stayed at a friend's. I went on a little trip with a college friend, and her parents were hosting us at their like guest house. And I have to say, like, that whole experience completely was above and beyond. Like, they had fully stocked the guest house with like multiple drinks and breakfast and fresh fruit, and had everything you could possibly want. I mean, we were only there for 2 days. And then they had like bikes lined up for us to be able to do, and like we're our own personal Uber drivers for a couple of things. We like got there after they picked us up from the airport, and like they had made smoothies for us while we were sitting by the pool. So like, I know that we're not necessarily their customers, but that's what it felt like, the most high end level of customer service ever. And I was like, I need a guest house and I need to invite people over because I want other people to feel this good about me. And like, this is such an easy thing to do, but it meant so much. So that's kind of like my most recent experience. Professionally, going the other way, just through what I do, I feel like I connect very easily with people because we're talking about their personal finances and we're talking about like their dreams and what's important to them. So kind of very quickly on, we get into a pretty vulnerable state and really open and sharing. So that kind of lends itself more easily, I think, in my line than some others being more transactional.
Great examples, Gina, and certainly the first one with the guest house example sounds like you had a personal concierge for the weekend.
It was amazing. I'm definitely can't wait to go back.
Awesome. Does anybody else want to share a story? Looks like Kara, you have your hands up.
Sure, I'll share something just because you mentioned it with the deli counter. I have a son who's 12 now, but from the time he was like 4, maybe even younger, 3, he's very chatty. And our deli guy, we kind of went at the same time every week to the grocery store. And our deli guy would literally like come around outside the deli to talk specifically to him. And he's chatty, so he would be the one to talk. And it kind of grew into this relationship that is like literally incredible. Like my kid has a personal connection with the deli guy to the point where as he got a little older, he went and got the deli stuff while I was doing fruits and vegetables and stuff. And I knew I would just look quickly to make sure Eric was there, and Eric was there, and my kid would run off to the deli and get what we needed. And it was the same thing every week. So even if my son messed up, Eric knew what to give me. And it like literally now Eric gives my kid like Christmas cards and gifts and has introduced him to other kids that he knows from the deli. And it's just this like don't underestimate the deli guy because they can too be like incredible customer service people. And I feel so comfortable. Like one time my kid got lost and he ran to the deli and Eric was like, just stay here, Sam, your mom will eventually come. And I did. And Eric like kept an eye on him while he was lost pretty young in the grocery store. So anyway, that's my great customer service with someone that you definitely would not expect it. And then like Gina, I would say like I work on a magazine for TCNJ magazine, and people are usually pretty happy to talk to me because I'm letting them tell me what they do and that we might actually highlight them. And so I'm lucky in that I don't have to pull too hard, I don't think, but at the same time, I don't underestimate like, you know, everything that you talked about, making sure you know their name and just kind of follow up and make sure that once they do the story or the interview that there's still a little bit of a connection, I think is important in my job, so that they don't just feel used for that one thing, but that now we're going to make sure you get the magazine and it's delivered to you. And if you sent photos, we're going to put a personal note when we send them back to you and things like that. I try to be aware of in my job. It's more after the fact, but just like, you know, they did me a big favor by giving me a lot of time. Sure, they're getting some publicity, but I think those little things afterwards help a lot.
Small touches make a big impact. And Kara, I want to meet your deli guy. That's amazing. I think we all want to meet your deli guy. So no, you're completely
He's a
right.
Dallas Cowboys fan though, which is someone from Philadelphia may not sit well with you, but if you can look over, and I'm from the Philly area, so that's the only negative I can say about the guy.
I'll try to look past that. You'll have to message me what market you go to. Laura, I see that your hand is up, and just in the interest in time, I may ask you to pop your story into the chat, and I'm going to move us to the second key if that's okay. But a lot of these keys are really interwoven, so I have a feeling that your story will be able to be repurposed when we get to the next key, if that's okay. All right, so our next key is anticipating needs. Pretty simply stated, guys, this is the difference between being reactive versus proactive. But I want to give you some other terminology today that you may not have heard of before. So rather than helping customers when they just express what their wish may be, our goal here is to get so in tune with what our customers want that we are actually keenly aware of their unexpressed wishes. So truly, this is that I'm one step ahead and I almost can predict what it is that they might want or what it is they may ask for before they even ask for it. Let me give you some examples that I think you'll be able to relate to. Going back to a hotel, the bellman at the hotel, he sees a guest struggling with shopping bags. Maybe they've already checked in, they were out shopping that afternoon and they have all these retail bags, and rather than waiting for the guest to drop a bag and maybe say, bellman, please come assist us, we need help, we're struggling, the bellman instead swoops on over, grabs all the bags off their arms, places them on the bell cart and says, please follow me, let's head right on upstairs. That is anticipating needs. That is an example of an unexpressed wish. Another example from a hotel is, we've all attempted to check into a hotel to be told our room isn't quite ready yet. Not a huge deal most of the time. However, we expect there to be some additional dialogue with the guest service associate or front desk associate, such as, we apologize that your room isn't quite ready yet. Please allow us to store that bag. Can I make sure I have your correct cell phone number on file? We'll give you a call as soon as your room's ready. Here's a bottle of water. Here's a map to the city. Let me walk you to the front door and I'll show you a great either walking route or a great place for lunch and some shopping. Okay, that once again is anticipating needs. They may not be able to change the fact that that room was not ready in time, but they have an absolute ability to change what happens thereafter. Okay. The last example I'm going to use is going out to eat with a little one. That's not always the easiest thing, and we certainly expect the staff at that restaurant to be attuned to our needs. That might mean helping us immediately with a booster seat or a high chair, bringing an appropriate water glass with a straw that's a plastic cup to the table. If there's a coloring page or crayons, bringing that proactively to the table. And probably the most important thing when going out to eat with the little one and anticipating needs is quickly placing the order, right? For those of you that have young kids. So all of those things, I'm not going to ask for any of those things immediately, maybe the high chair, but otherwise, I just want somebody to anticipate my needs and make it happen for smooth sailing over the rest of that meal. All right, so I'm coming to all of you guys now. I want to hear, how have you successfully anticipated the needs of your customers? Or when you've been on the receiving end, when have you been the recipient of somebody anticipating your needs where you went, wow, they knew what I was going to ask for? Amy, it looks like your hand is raised.
Hi, so I have an interesting one that was more on the, I didn't even know that I needed this need that came to me, but it is a hotel example. And it was a hotel that we stayed in, and, we checked in, they brought our bags to the room. Later, as we, had our, welcome cocktail or whatever it was, by the time we got into our room, they had unpacked our things, everything was hanging. But this was the added touch that was just so unique. I've never seen this before. They had a sewing kit, like they always do in the hotel room. This was, they had customized the thread color to my clothing. So all the colors that if I had a need to sew a button on or correct something was all customized to what was in what I had packed. So that was just something I've never experienced before. And I thought was kind of an interesting way above and beyond, and a very interesting touch that I experienced.
Great example, Amy. And what we're starting to see here, everybody, is how all of these keys have overlapped. So Amy's example not only is anticipating her needs, but absolutely an example of personalized attention as well, because they were attuned to her wardrobe. They were attuned to her and basically made Amy feel like she was the only customer or the only guest staying in that hotel. Great, great, great. Anybody else have a story before I move on to our third key? Kristen, it looks like your hand is raised.
Yes. Hi, Jamie, former volleyball teammate of yours. So hi, so excited to see you.
Kristen, good to see you.
Yes. So, and talk about worlds colliding. So my quick story is just actually not necessarily customer, but anticipating the needs of your neighbors with Amy, who's also on the line. So Amy had reached out at the beginning of COVID saying, hey, you know, I've got a teenage daughter who can help you out if you need help with your little one. So it was something wasn't even on my list. And I was like, yes, this is the answer to my prayers. I didn't even know I needed that. And it was perfect. I loved it. So thank you both. I'm really excited to listen today, Jamie.
Thanks for being here, Kristen. Great seeing you. And I love these examples when they're in our personal lives, because I really, really think that just to be a good human being, these keys really have such great application just in everyday life and not just in business as well. And certainly we want to be a good human being in business too, right? But I think that they just help be our best version of ourselves. So thanks for that example, Kristen. All right, our third key, critically important. And if I had time today to kind of show you a list of best companies for 2021 that are always thought to be the best in terms of customer service, one of the things that without fail that their employees are consistently doing is that they are empowered. They have the ability to make decisions on the fly. They have the ability to not let things escalate up the food chain. And I refer to that as first person resolution. So being empowered to resolve issues immediately. If some of you on the call today have teams that you oversee, this is critical for your success, is that you are empowering your team members that are beneath you, giving them power and permission for them to be able to field inquiries and make decisions when you're not present. Okay, it also leads to great customer satisfaction on the job as well. Let me give an example here. Who here is an avid coffee drinker? Doesn't need to be Starbucks, but any avid coffee drinkers. All right, Angela, what is your preferred coffee drink? Do you have a preferred one?
When I go to Starbucks, I often will get hazelnut in my coffee, which isn't like that fancy, but I just really enjoy that. So coffee with hazelnut and room for cream.
Okay, great. So let's pretend that Angela went to a coffee shop this morning or Starbucks, and she ordered her coffee with hazelnut and room for cream. And unfortunately, it did not taste as it should. She says something immediately to the barista, lets them know that there was a mistake and would they mind redoing the drink. Now that barista, do they need to go and ask permission of their supervisor or manager to remake that drink? Absolutely not, right? On the spot, they're going to remake Angela's drink. They're going to hand it back to her. And I would certainly hope that before she walks out of the store, they ask her to take another sip and make sure it's to her liking. So the hope is that Angela only is remembering, not the mistake, but how quickly they rectified that mistake and left her with her preferred beverage. That is an example of first person resolution. It didn't need to escalate up to the food chain to get an answer. And it also meant that Angela was not perturbed. She was actually happy that it happened so fast. The opposite is true when we sometimes call a local utility company. Okay, raise your hand for me if you've had an experience calling one of these companies where you relay all of your information to the very first person on the phone, the last 4 digits of your social security number, your issue, your home address, yada, 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 only to be told, oh, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Let me pass you to the right department. Then you have to retell your story, oftentimes completely over again. Sometimes it takes another pass to a third person, sometimes maybe even a fourth person. But this leaves us irate as the customer, right? The first person that comes into contact with us, they may not always have the answer, but we need them to at least have the accountability and the ownership to be the one to get the answer and report back. That makes us feel so much better as the customer, right? So I want to ask all of you, can you remember a time when you showcased an I can do attitude versus a, that's not my job? Okay, which is kind of that, once again, the opposite of being empowered. Empowerment is, it's all my job. I can handle it, I'll get the answer. So who has an example of a time that you were empowered with an I can do attitude and made it happen? And Kristen, I see your hand raised, but I'm not sure if that's from your hand from before or a new hand raised.
That is from before.
Okay. All right. I know somebody has a story of when they took charge, or maybe an employee that reports to you that took charge. Angela. Okay, great. Thank you so much. And hello to your cat.
My cat has joined us. I don't know if this is exactly what you're looking for, but what I think about is, so, you know, I have my specific job and role at TCNJ, but then we also have some events that our entire team helps with, right? We all jump in and make it happen together. And so a recent example is homecoming, and we're all given different responsibilities with that. And I was this year at the registration table checking people in. And, you know, sometimes there's a circumstance where someone comes up and, you know, their name isn't on the registration list, but they have a receipt on their phone that shows they registered. And for some reason, you know, they didn't end up on our list or whatever the case may be. And in those cases, you know, just sort of using your own judgment to say, you know, I'm going to accommodate this person. I can see they've registered. For some reason, they're not on our list. Let me make a note so that we know what happened here and not let this person have to wait too long to, you know, get into the event.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Laura, I'm coming over to you.
Yeah, so I work at TCNJ as well. And in addition to reaching out to alumni, we also meet frequently with parents of current students. And recently I was speaking to two parents, and something came up that they were, you know, they had some concerns about things that were happening with their students' experience. And it was something that I have never dealt with before, and something completely out of the realm of my everyday, you know, position. But, you know, I really felt like they just wanted to be listened to, and they wanted, you know, somebody at the college to hear what they were saying. And so following that meeting, I, you know, tracked down the information that would help remedy the situation, and I passed that along to them. And, you know, I had to pull that information from other departments that we don't typically work with in these instances. But instead of telling them like, oh, that's fantastic, that's great, but that's not my department, you know, I thought I just took the extra step to, you know, help resolve that situation for them.
Awesome. Great job taking ownership. And you know what? Yes, it's more work to do that, but it makes you feel so good to take that extra step. And basically what you guys are doing in these examples is you're treating somebody in the exact way that you would hope somebody that would treat you, right? You would want somebody that's helping you to have an I can do attitude. So thank you so much for sharing those examples. All right, let's move on to my personal favorite of the 5 keys, which is under promising and over delivering. And don't get me wrong, they're all super important. This one I think just holds a special place for me, having been a former concierge, and I'm going to share the reason why now. So under promising and over delivering It is critical to make yourself look like you are the hero in the eyes of your customer and not to disappoint them. So a classic concierge example here would be a guest asks you to get them into the hottest restaurant in town. And in Philadelphia, one of the hardest reservations to still get after a decade is a restaurant called Zahav. And if I were to overpromise and say, sure, I can get you into Zahav, party at 4, this Saturday night, 7:30, no problem. And then I can't do it, I've really, really disappointed my customer, right? The guest. But instead, I can use a little bit of finesse and I can say, oh, that's a really difficult reservation to get into. It oftentimes takes a month's notice. You know, do you have a little flexibility in your dining time? Would you consider sitting at the bar? They do serve a full menu at the bar. And if I can't get you into Zahav, would you like to try a different restaurant that maybe also has Mediterranean cuisine? And maybe the answer is yes. But then when I'm able to actually get them that coveted reservation at Zahav, I'm amazing in their eyes, right? I'm the hero. So this concept of under promising, but then over delivering, huge. And once again, this one is huge also in your personal life when dealing with spouse, loved ones, etc. Another simple example of this is at the valet. Oftentimes, valets will quote a time. They might say your car will be ready, will be brought around in 5 minutes. Great. And then 5 minutes goes by and we're looking at our watch and 6 minutes and 7 minutes and 8 minutes later, there's still no car. So I want to stress here that to successfully under promise, whenever there might be time associated with something, just be mindful to give it maybe a little bit of a vague time frame is better, because if you're going to give something a specific time frame, you need to deliver. And for those of you that do a lot of engagement with alumni that are on the call today, or I know that there's some folks here that work with students, if you say, oh, I'll get back to you by the end of the day, you need to get back to them by the end of the day. And even if you don't have all of the information yet, just a small touch point to say, didn't forget about you, just wanted to let you know I'm still doing some fact finding. Thank you for your patience. I'll circle back with you again by week's end. Okay, that is so much better than missing the deadline that you stated. And then the last example I want to give is we've all been at a restaurant, and a nice restaurant, and there's been specials shared with us from the server. We order one of those specials. The server walks away, only further to be 2 minutes later, the server walks back over and says, I'm so sorry, miss, we're out of the blah, blah, blah special this evening. And we go, oh, now I would have much rather not been told a list of specials than to have ordered a special to now be told that they could not fulfill that request, right? This makes me feel very sad. So critically important to under promise and over deliver. So I'm coming back to all of you in the audience. Who has an example of a time when you have successfully under-promised and over-delivered, leaving yourself to look like the hero in the eyes of your customers? I'm hoping that you guys all do this. I have a feeling like, I feel like most of you guys do this one already, and you just don't want to brag about it.
I'll just say for magazine, we always say that we don't know what the cover story will be, even though sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but we never admit it, so that if they end up on the cover, it's definitely an over delivery because they don't expect that. Perfect example. Absolutely. Right. If you tell somebody they're on the cover and then they end up on page 11, still great, but in their eyes, but you said I'm going to be on the cover. So perfect example. Does anybody else have one to share before we move on? Let me see, somebody just put something in the chat. Geraldine, do you feel comfortable sharing out loud? We'd love to hear your example.
Hi, yes, I do. Yeah. I have a Shackley business, and typically a lot of times people can go online, or they call the 800 number and they order. And as we all know, once the computer gets fed something, it's like warp speed, and to try to cancel an order is, you have to jump through hoops. And so I've had a couple situations like this where I will say, I don't know, once it goes through the computer, it's very difficult to reverse it, but I'll try. And I've been successful on a couple of occasions in, reversing that and helping the person to put in a new or a different order. So that's just one example where, you do get, that's our job really, to provide, to get beyond the mechanisms of the technology and to try to help, because people are often, my husband spent almost a whole day with AT&T and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, trying to figure out what was going on with our iPhones. So when somebody makes an extra effort, and in our neighborhood, we have an AT&T office in the next town, and they are not as helpful as if I go to the mall and go to the AT&T store there. So what am I going to do when I need something? I go to the AT&T store at the mall. So customer service, I feel, is something we should all strive for sure.
Yes, and that's great that you've determined who your go-to is, right, when you have a need. And thank you for sharing the retail example of how of course, you're not going to emphatically promise that you can stop that order, but now when you're able to stop that order, once again, you're the hero, you're able to deliver. So great examples. Thanks so much. All right, we are at our 5th and final key for today, which is timely service recovery. So this is me, everybody. This is what I used to look like when I took things personally. When a customer was upset, mad, irate, I could not basically handle it. I was frazzled. I would raise my voice. I would talk faster than usual. And unfortunately, rather than successfully de-escalating things, I unintentionally did the opposite, which is that I escalated the situation. And today, this is me. And although, yes, there are still some times where I find myself, up against a difficult situation where somebody is mad, I have learned how to remain calm, not take it personally, and remember the 6 steps to service recovery. Because once again, we cannot always eliminate the upset, but what's in our power is we can eliminate how we respond. The goal is to strive to calmly make them forget, making the customer forget why they were upset in the first place because you so wowed them with the recovery. Now, we don't have time today to go through all 6 of these keys. 6 of these steps, which is stop, treat the emotion, clarify needs, make amends, take action, follow up. The one step that I'm going to focus on today is step 2, which I believe is the most critical, and the one we often forget, which is treating the emotion, okay? Oftentimes, we are so quick to be solution-oriented or goal-oriented, and we want to jump to the action step of solving the problem. But if we didn't properly make somebody feel like we're heard, then we've failed because they're not ready yet to then hear the answer. So treating the emotion, and we're going to pretend that we are back in person with customers, okay? So we are going to make eye contact. And the best possible way to show good listening skills is we're going to nod our head. Okay, we're not going to talk yet. We're just going to nod along and show that we're actively listening. And then we are going to begin to empathize. I'd love to have you guys quickly go to the chat box again for me. And can you guys type in some examples of empathetic phrases that you might have used or have been used on you successfully? So what is an example of an empathetic phrase? And just as a quick reminder, if you're saying, I don't know exactly how to define empathy, empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and really basically showcasing that you care. All right, I'm seeing some awesome examples, guys. All right, so Geraldine says, Oh, sorry, that was from the previous question. Okay, Gina says, I hear you. Laura says, I understand, or I can relate. And also I hear you. And I understand, everybody. That is probably the most universal example. So Angela says, I can understand why that would frustrate you. Good job, Geraldine, using words like feel, felt, and found. Kara also says, I understand. And Kristen, perfect. That sounds so frustrating. And these, I want everybody to be careful that empathetic phrases are amazing and they do work, but they need to come from a genuine place. They can't sound scripted and they can't sound like you've used them 50 times already that same day. Okay, so this sometimes takes practice. Unfortunately, today we're not going to have time to practice, but this may mean literally talking to a mirror. This may be talking to a significant other and really working on using your full body to express empathy. Some other examples besides I understand would be I would feel the same way. I appreciate how difficult, or if I were in your position. And once again, we need some conviction when we say these. For me, when I'm in person with somebody, I also try to kind of almost put my whole body into it, really to like I'm relating. I'm there for you. I care. Okay. But once again, before you can go on and take any action to solve the complaint of your upset customer, you have to treat the emotion, and that starts with showcasing good empathy. All right, last quick question of the day. Has anybody had success with using one of these empathetic statements where you found like it really helped you diffuse the situation and then ultimately leave with a customer that was happy? Or maybe you were on the receiving end of good empathy. All right, in the interest in time, I'm gonna move us forward, but I want you to think about when you're out on the job, when you're out just in life, I feel like you're gonna have a time very soon where you're gonna need to express some good empathy. And once again, these phrases will help you quite a bit. All right, I'm gonna leave us with a final story. It's a true story. It's one that motivates me still to this day. And it may be one that you've heard, but maybe I'm gonna tell it just a little bit differently. So there was a mom and a dad and a little boy who checked out of a hotel in Florida. They flew home to Chicago, where they were from. And to the horror of the parents, the little boy could not find his stuffed animal anywhere. They checked with the airline didn't have it. They called back to the hotel. Fortunately, the hotel had found the stuffed animal. It got tangled in the sheets and wound up in the housekeeping department. The employee on the phone was in the security department, took down all the dad's contact information, promised they would ship it out that very same day, and was about to hang up the phone when the dad said, "Thank you again so much. Our little boy was so upset, we had to actually tell him a white lie and let him know that Joshy, his stuffed animal, was on vacation." The worker at that hotel in Florida picked up on that and decided to take the stuffed animal on a vacation and took photos of that vacation before putting Joshy back in the box and closing the box and shipping it back to Chicago. So Joshy went swimming, Joshy was sunbathing, Joshy went to the hotel bar, Joshy went back up to the room and put on a robe and slippers and ordered room service. You get the picture. So these photos, picture them in the FedEx box when they are now received the next day in Chicago. It was a major win, right? The little boy opens this package. He, first of all, is so happy that Joshy's back. But then these photos and seeing that Joshy was happy and was on vacation, it was incredible. And the takeaway is that, once again, if we think back to the beginning of our time together, it was not in this worker's job description to take Joshy on a vacation. He was a security guard, but he thought about his purpose and he broke free of the mold of his job description and was able to really provide an unbelievable, memorable experience. The 5 keys that I shared with you today, I believe, really help to create memorable experiences for customers. Perhaps you even have a 6th key that's something that you pull out and is in your toolbox and you use a lot. If you do, please feel free to put it in the chat box. Would love to hear about it. And The goal, once again, is to reach higher on our quest to really provide memorable experiences for our customers. And the 5 keys certainly provide some good benchmark in an effort to do that on a daily basis. Thank you, guys. Who has some questions?
I just have a comment. I feel like you could tweak this ever so slightly, and this applies to parenting so hard. Like everything you were saying, I was like, oh, we have to do that all the time. Like the over promising or the under promising, like every single thing here is like how to deal with a child, which is, I guess, a smaller version of a customer on it. But I was thinking of that a lot as you were going through it. I was like, this is really good stuff for how you have to handle kids.
That's interesting, Gina. I feel like I would need to be an attendee at that session. I don't know if I feel confident enough in my parenting to lead that one, but I think that you're right. There's some transferable skills. Anybody else have a question? And as Pam said, this is being recorded. Pam, do you want to chime in and let people know where they can find it?
Sure, I'll add the website where you'll be able to find it. It's on our alumni page. I'll add the website to the chat. And you'll see I also added Jamie's website to the chat as well, if you want to check her out in more detail.
Perfect, thank you. And my contact information is here on this last slide. I can put it in the chat as well. If you all want to reach out to me, I'm happy to send you a little follow-up one-pager that has all of these 5 keys. If you want to take it back to your team and your coworkers and tell everybody that they also need to under-promise, over-deliver, you know, all these things also make for a better experience internally. You know, we didn't talk about that specifically today, but the internal customer experience, the experience with your colleagues and how you treat each other is so critical as well, not just that external customer. So I'll put my email in the chat, and thank you guys all for participating today and helping to really make for some really great discussion.
Thank you, Jamie. We appreciate you taking time. And I love how this was, you know, just to touch on what Gina said and Angela mentioned it in the chat, how it's relatable to all industries and all areas of life. So I think there's really something for everyone to take from it. So thank you. And hopefully if anyone has further questions or wants to get in touch with Jamie, she just added her contact in the chat. So please feel free to do that. And yes, Jamie is going to send a one-pager. So we'll send that out to all the attendees along with the link to where you can find the recording of this webinar. So thank you all. I'll let you get on. Jamie, I know you have another engagement at 1:30, so I won't keep you any longer. But again, thank you. And thanks to everyone who joined us.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and thanks so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
My pleasure.
Very much.